Hello there and welcome. My name is Adam Godwin from the Global Metacognition Institute, and in this video we're going to explore how students can use tracking and monitoring worksheets that go in the front and back of their exercise books or workbooks in order to increase their levels of metacognition. And the basic goal of these monitoring worksheets is to trigger metacognitive reflection in the students that you work with. I have with me an exercise book of one of my students, and let's have a look at how these work. Well, for a start, at the front of the exercise book, we're asking them if they're ready to learn. We're making them realize that the onus of responsibility is on them, and it outlines the self-regulation or metacognitive cycle of planning, monitoring, evaluating, and regulating. And if we open this up, we can see the student has, for each of these conditions, given themselves a rating out of 10 and calculated an average score. So we're getting students to think about their recollection of previous learning, their current state of mind in terms of concentration and motivation, and their attitude to learning, their understanding of current targets, their mood and emotion, their energy levels, their general preparedness and readiness for learning, their bodily health, their physiological state, are they physically fit for learning, and their current state of mind. And we're also asking students to calculate a mean average. So at key stage 2 and 3, if you do this, you're sneaking in a little bit of numeracy practice and getting the cogs turning. The general purpose of these pre-lesson reflections is to focus on the planning and monitoring aspect of the self-regulated learning cycle. So we're getting students to really think about how ready they are for learning. And one of the great things about these monitoring worksheets is if you use them repeatedly, you're setting up a kind of systematic approach to metacognition, whereby students kind of get into the habit at the start of lessons of thinking about how ready they are to learn and how they could be more ready to learn next time. And likewise, at the back of this workbook, we ask the students, how was the lesson? We're getting them to evaluate how they did in the lesson, their attitude to learning. And likewise, we have the conditions again, and the student has given themselves ratings out of 10 for how much effort they made, how they feel the lesson went, how much they actually learnt. We're asking them to evaluate their own behaviour. So we apply the self-regulated learning cycle to student behaviour as well as learning and concentration and the like. How well does the student understand how to improve? How much will they remember from this lesson in a week's time? Their attitude, how interesting they found the lesson, their level of optimism, and their general state of mind at the end of the lesson. And in terms of the self-regulated learning cycle, this obviously is referring to the evaluation and regulation phase of the self-regulated learning cycle. We're getting students to think about how they performed and how they could increase performance. So that front of exercise book monitoring worksheet you can download for free at the Global Metacognition Institute's website, globalmetacognition.com. We've created a pack of 10 that you can download for a small fee, or you can access freely if you have a membership plan in the members area. Let's have a look at some of the options you have. And one piece of advice I would give when it comes to these monitoring worksheets is to use a different set of monitoring worksheets for each of the year groups you work with. And if you download the pack of 10, you have a range to choose from. You can choose from one of 5 at the beginning and one of 5 for at the end of lessons. And by using both of these at the beginning and end, you create a kind of metacognitive lesson wrapper effect. So you're getting students to think about every stage of the self-regulated learning cycle. You're getting them to think about how they're going to be ready for learning at the beginning, how they could be better readied at the beginning of lessons, and at the end, how they did, how they could improve performance. So these are a great way of creating regular metacognitive reflection at the start of your lessons. And you can see we have 5 different formats that you will be able to select from with the premium download. 2 of them are a kind of quantitative rating activity like the one I just showed you. And 2 of them involve sentence completion tasks, just quick sentence completion tasks to get students reflecting on these metacognitive issues, getting them to think about how they can improve their approach to learning, perhaps some of the targets that they should be keeping in mind that they established in previous lessons, and their readiness to learn and how they might be more ready. You might get students to think about the obstacles they will encounter or they might encounter and how they can plan their approach to learning so that they overcome those obstacles. And we also have one of these monitoring worksheets which uses miniature mind maps to get students engaging in these metacognitive reflections. So you simply choose one of these for each year group and you get students to glue them in to the front of their exercise books nice and neatly, and it's a great way to create metacognitive reflection. Let's have a look at the end of lesson monitoring worksheets that we might refer to. This one, for example, asks students to add a bullet point to each column at the end of each lesson and to add a target to the mind map. And this helps students to evaluate and regulate the learning process. So again, we're clearly referring to the self-regulated learning cycle or the metacognitive cycle in this process. It's a great way to foster metacognition. In this second worksheet, we can see again a focus on targets and a different progressive reflection task so that students add a little bit more at the end of each lesson. And one great thing about this is that they are seeing the targets they set before. So they're reflecting on whether they're actually remembering and meeting these targets as opposed to just setting the targets and forgetting about them, which of course is one of the main dangers when it comes to target settings we need to be aware of. Similar to the pre-lesson reflection task we have that we looked at the beginning, we have some rating grids that students can use to evaluate and regulate their performance at the end of lessons. And again, we have a mini mind mapping task here, and this worksheet also includes a nice little activity where we get students to consider what they would need to search for on Google if they wanted to find out more about that lesson, about the topic that's been looked at in that lesson. So a good way to encourage independent learning, independent research skills, and such the like. So these are a clear way to develop metacognition and self-regulated learning. They're quite paper, printer budget friendly, which is one advantage to them, and they are best suited for students aged 11 to 16 years. So if you want to get a hold of a free copy, simply visit globalmetacognition.com and go to the free download section where you can download one of them for free. You can try it out and experiment with it and see if it's a good strategy for the students you work with. And if you want to get hold of the whole set of 10, go to globalmetacognition.com or use the link in the video description. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you thought this approach was a good idea and a useful strategy for metacognition. Please do like and subscribe and check out some of the other videos that we've made here at the Global Metacognition Institute.